Welcome to the Psych Gym. I'm your trainer, Vanessa Perry, a former mental health therapist turned intuitive counselor. Much like a physical gym, in this space we'll aim to target specific psychological muscles and train them to be stronger. I'm so glad you are joining this gym. Let's hit the weights. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this episode of the Psych Gym. We are going to talk about fairness today. For those of you who do not know, I am a Libra, and I feel that I embody all of the things that a Libra is. You don't have to believe in astrology, but if you know me and you look up Libra, you'll go, I might believe in astrology. I am a super Libra. And one of the things about me is the need for fairness, the balancing act type situation. It's a thing. It's an innate thing within me. And so this is why I decided to do this episode, because I thought about how I've had to work really, really hard at being happy, despite the fact that things are not fair, that many, many things are not fair. And I think it may help some people. For those of you who don't know, I often will bring my own experience into this space because I think there's something about it. When you know that somebody has gone through something, or you know that somebody has maybe gotten further in the perfection process of the thing that it is that you're trying to do, it's nice, right? Like it's nice to hear that perspective versus somebody that just kind of maybe learned about in a book or heard some stories and they were like, yeah, this is the information that I passed on. And especially in this case. So this fairness issue. I mean, I have struggled with this for a big part of my life. So I very much get it. And the reason why this came about was because I was thinking about all the ways that we rage in our society, and a lot of times it's stuff that we just don't think is fair, or things that we have decided like should be one way, and then if it's not that way, then there is a covert fairness conversation that we're having. And so my goal today with this tiny podcast is to kind of bring you from that microscopic thinking into the bigger picture, to allow you to not be so stressed out about these little things, so that you won't dwell on the unfairness issue and move into something that is a little bit more constructive, whether it's for the issue itself or for you and your happiness. Because y'all, the idea that we can be vigilantes and make everything go exactly the way that we've decided it, I mean, if you're still holding on to that, God bless, because I don't know how. I don't know how you haven't faced that reality yet, how you haven't how you haven't hit the radical acceptance of, man, there's all kinds going on. Like, there's all kinds of people out there and there's all kinds of things going on. And so if I let myself get caught in the unfairness conversation, there's a couple things that'll happen. I'll ruin my own life, that's for sure. I will absolutely let that get inside me and eat me up alive. But the other thing is that I won't be part of the solution, right? I'm not going to be part of the solution if I'm constantly thinking that the solution is that I tell people what to do and they do it, which is essentially what people are doing when they've decided that something's not fair. Then the fight becomes, I'm going to make you make it fair. And we've been doing that forever and ever, right? History repeats itself on a regular basis, and we just keep doing the same thing. So to me, the definition of insanity we know is that, but yet we continue to do it. And this is one of those things that we do in our personal lives all the time. I talk about it with people all the time where, we'll have 30 minutes of a session be about how unfair things are, or how wrong somebody did something, or how they've decided that somebody else should live their life in order for it to feel balanced for them. And often, and my clients can probably corroborate this, often I'm kind of like, yeah, but how much of that time of your life are we going to have taken up when you don't have control over this? Well, I'll just tell them and they'll do it. I'm absolutely not giving you quotes. I'll just tell them and they will do it because they will understand that this is the right way to do it, and then everything will be fine. And it's like, again, like, can we hit the radical acceptance part of that, of like, that's probably not going to happen. And if it does happen, right, if there's an off chance that the person that you've decided is doing things unfairly and should do things differently wants to do things differently, they sure as hell are not going to hear it that way and be willing participants in the change. So we have to, for our own good, learn the radical acceptance and learn how to pause so that we will not let things come in and puppet us, because that's what happens. The conversation right now, well, we got many conversations right now, but we're talking about like a lot of global things that are happening, and we are talking about politics on a regular basis. And we're just infighting, and there's division, and people are, up in arms about the way things are supposed to be. And like, I validate all of that on every level. I'd be a pretty shitty counselor if I couldn't get on that level, right? Like, so if I can't sit down with anybody and just be interested in how they got where they are, then I would not be really good at my job, right? Like, I have to be somewhat objective in order to be able to help people learn. I can't just come in with judgment. I have to come in with curiosity. I have to come in with like, wow, that may be against my personal beliefs, but I am very interested in how they got there for you. Because if there is a tide to be turned, it is not going to be through force. It is going to be through understanding. It always is through understanding, right? So, and it does happen. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that I don't ever sit down with somebody and be like, are you kidding? Because of course I do. I mean, there are people that have sat in, the counseling space and reminded me of me, like back in the day. And like that, you want to talk about a mind F, that'll do it to you, where you're like, oh Lord in heaven, like that was me. Okay. Yeah. And I loved me then, and I love you now. But oh gosh, I see how much better it is on my side now because I've done the work that you're about to do. Right. If you want to, though, that's the thing about it, is that I can see past me and be like, wow, they might not even want to be where I'm at today. And that's fine. I can't force a person to be something that they are not, but I can lead people to have options. I can lead people to see things differently so that they might make a different choice. And that's been incredibly effective for me. It's been incredibly effective to meet people where they are and give them compassion instead of hatred, and allow them to tell their story and be compassionate while they, experience my story as well. It feels very much like invalidating. I think sometimes people are like, why do I always have to be the bigger person? And it's like, not being the bigger person. It's just leading by example sometimes, right? And it's a whole other conversation if people continuously do not lead by your example. So, different podcast for a different day. So when we talk about things not being fair, we're usually talking about something that triggers us into feeling that way, right? There's something, whether that is, the politics, or, things that are going on in the world, or if something is, the unfair division of labor in the home, amongst siblings. Sometimes there's sibling rivalry because there's there is an appearance of attention being, deprived, in one area and an abundance in another area. There's a lot of different ways where this plays out in life. So it's not just, in the political field, even though right now, as I'm recording this is a week after the election here in the United States, and we're still, there's a lots still bubbling up and going on. And my goal has always been exactly what I'm teaching you right now, just being like, but my bigger picture has nothing to do with any of what y'all are talking about. My bigger picture is absolutely all of us trying to meet in the middle as human beings to try to make our experience better here on this earth, and to stop putting it in the hands of other people. To me, that's the worst unfairness ever, is me giving up my control to other people, especially when I don't have to. I don't have to, and y'all don't have to either. Again, lots of tangents coming out today, but I'm not going to go on them. So what happens when we get triggered? When we start to think, man, this is not fair. This is not the way that I think it should be. The pause. You'll get very comfortable with the pause. It is not a very, I couldn't come up with anything catchy when I first started to talk about this in sessions. So it became the pause, and now it's the pause. I a little bit wish that I had come up with something really cool, but it's the pause. Very obvious. The pause is that space where you regain control, and you learn that that is the space where you have the most influence, is in the pause. So the pause is what happens when you get triggered into something, and then you allow yourself some space in between your reaction slash behavior, right? That's the time where it's almost like you're getting yourself together, and you have to, what we try to do is increase that space so that by the time we get to action and behavior, we are very intentional, likely more calm and even keeled. That's kind of what we're looking for from the pause. The pause is like, to put it in maybe like an example term, like you get the oh shit trigger, like, and then you're like, okay, pause, don't do a damn thing. Like, let me just think this through, all of it, right? Because I know that my nervous system is reacting, or else I would not be in this state of mind right now. But if I'm working on something actively, if I'm trying to create more peace in my own life, it's not even about peace in your relationships. If you're trying to be more of a peaceful person and you find yourself getting triggered into upset a billion times a day, well, shit, the pause is for you. It has nothing to do with your experience with other people. It's like for you, so that you can interrupt your processes before you start doing things that create the same cycle that you're always in, right? I get triggered and upset. I start yelling at people, or, blaming people, or calling people up and telling them what they need to do, right? And then they're mad at me. And so then after I calm down, then I feel really bad because the way that I did it wasn't the way I wanted to do it. And so now I got to go and I got to grovel and or apologize and be like, my bad, man. Like, I just got all freaked out. And now that I'm not as upset, I don't even really see it as unfair and freaking out, like worthy. So, right. That's a shitty cycle. It's a cycle that nobody really wants to be in. We would rather be in the cycle of like, oh, like, right, like I got hit in the gut and now I'm just going to take a minute, figure out what the right thing for me in this moment really is. Not the right thing for my trauma, not the right thing for my nervous system to feel safe again, because sometimes that is not the right thing. What is the best thing for my peace? What is it? So in the pause, when we're triggered by unfairness, what we're trying to do is find actions that we can take where we actually do have influence, and we can use our presence for good, or for solution, if you will. So in the pause, I teach people to do things like, am I really in danger? That's usually the first thing that I ask, because our nervous system, right, like is detecting danger of some kind, whether it's an insult to my intelligence or actual physical danger. Unfortunately, the body kind of reacts the same. We have to do this mental work to go, listen, body, the body feels the same, but we do not have to act the same, because this is not a threat. This is not a real threat. This is not something that we have to freak out about and do something about it right this moment, because we are not in actual danger. So that's the first question I always teach people. Am I in danger? What is the real danger? And what is the perceived danger? And then in this instance, when we're talking about things not being fair, we're going to ask questions like, how important is this to my future self? Right? And this is for more of some of those, low level arguments that we have with people about, like my ex and I used to fight over like really dumb things like musical artists and things like that. Like, how important really is this to the future, right? What meaning am I making of this, right? So I'll give it, it's perfect. I'll go right into those like dumb examples, right? So we would be arguing about something, and you could see that it was becoming like a moral argument. We were using the celebrities or musicians as markers for our morality, right? So then we would be like we're talking about the celebrities, but we're actually talking about each other and what we believe each other to have in terms of moral compass. Ridiculous, right? Sounds really dumb, but that's when you're in the pause, you realize how dumb this is and you won't do it. But when you're not, you just do it, right? Because you're just offended and like everything happens and you just start fighting with each other. So, how important is this really in my future? Now, some of the issues we're talking about right now, y'all, I know you're listening and you're like, it's really friggin' important, right? Like it's a problem. And so, yeah, I need to fight about it. Got it. Good. That's absolutely 100%. The next question that we're going to ask is it likely to be settled this way? And that's the second gut punch, right? Is because we're like, oh, now I have to ask myself if I truly am God and if this is truly my work. Right? My job is to go in and with force tell everybody how they need to do it, because that's my job here, is to do it forcefully, even though time and time again I realize that force doesn't actually do the job the same way. I'm just going to keep doing it that way, right? Because what happens when we're forceful? People get lost in the fact that we're being forceful, and now they're not listening because they feel upset that you attacked them. Rightfully so in some of the instances where we snap at people, and we're not going to solve the problem. So yeah, like the answer to that is no, this is not likely to be settled this way. I have to think of a better way to do this. And that's the next question, right? And this is just an example question, right? Because each time you're in the pause, you're going to have to ask yourself different questions, which is why this is so difficult. But in this instance, is there another way or a better way to help this person see my viewpoint? Great question to ask yourself, right? How is the audience, the person right in front of me who has triggered the shit out of me, how do they receive information? Are they even in receptive mode, right? If they're already freaking out at me, they are not in receptive mode. You're not going to change their mind. And you have to be able to pause and realize that. Or else just keep fighting. Nobody's going to listen and everybody's going to be upset. You can do that. That's a choice you can make. But once you're in the pause and you get this far into there and you realize that that's the choice you're going to make, well, it's a completely different kind of ownership, right? To sit there and go, no, I would rather fight and accomplish nothing except for new hurt feelings and new anger, and it's going to ruin my entire day. I'd rather do that instead of just be quiet right now because I realize that they are not in receptive mode. Like, ugh. You say that shit out loud. You're like, well, no, I can't do it. Or like, I can, but I'm just like the guilt and the, like, I'm just going to shake my head at myself because I didn't read the room. And then, yeah, right. So there's that. And then, another question too, sometimes we're not seeing the other side of it. A lot of what I do in my work is humanization of, taking your own lens off and saying, why would a person be like that? Going back to what I was talking about before, if you could ever see your past self and be like, oh, Jesus, right? Because you've grown, you're like, oh my God, I would judge the shit out of that person. But I was that person and I understood why I did those things, or I wouldn't have done them. Gosh, that compassion goes a long way, or that just moment of humanization goes a long way when it comes to trying to come together with another person to create something that feels a little bit more fair or balanced. So if your answer to that is I do not see their viewpoint, or their viewpoint is attacking me or whatever, you're not deeping. I don't edit this, so you heard that whole thing. You're not digging deep enough to see what their viewpoint actually would be. You're not seeing them as a human being at this moment that has their own experiences, right or wrong in your eyes, that has their own life traumas and things like that. Because if everybody could really see that, we'd all treat each other differently. But what happens is in that split second, we start to make inferences and then we start to act from the inferences. And that's kind of like how we get in these places of continuing imbalance. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot. I'm trying to make these a little bit shorter in terms of podcasts so that you can get the bite-sized information. But I'm very long-winded, so here we are at almost 20 minutes. I hope that is helpful when you think about fairness and how you get upset when things are not fair and how you can truly make an impact. Because to me, I feel like understanding this is how to make a true impact, not one that is based on force, because that doesn't mean understanding. If somebody is obedient, that does not mean that they understand it. And it a lot of times will mean something different in the future. What we're aiming for is to try to understand each other and to try to work together to create that balance. So the more of us that are doing it, the better. I understand it's difficult. I know I go through it too. There are certain things and certain people that still have the ability to kind of trigger me into upset and then reaction, right? It's not a perfect process. We're not always going to do everything, the way we intend to when we're in our calm space. But the goal is to do it more often. The goal is to learn from the things that come up and really be effective. If you want to be an effective change maker, you have to perfect this. Man, I didn't like saying perfect. You have to be much better at this if you want to be a true change maker. You can be a forced change maker, but you're not going to make the same impact that you think that you're making if you're doing it that way. You want people to understand it. You want people to pass that down as understanding, because people with understanding, they're using their heart. And people who use their heart and their soul, it's a whole different ball game, right? There's no revolt usually that's going to happen. There's no resentment that's usually going to happen, right? It becomes like a true change. So I hope that settles in for y'all. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me or write a comment, or head to the website and send me an email. But I hope that was helpful. Thank you for letting me be your guide today. Love y'all. Thanks for listening. To learn more about what I do and how to work with me, head to thepsychgym.com to check it out. Keep lifting, y'all. It's worth it.